Welcome to the Feeling Better podcast. My name is Maria, and I'm the host of this podcast and the author of the book, The Feeling Better 10-4 program, that teaches you a practical, effective, and inspirational 10-week program to overcome your gambling addiction for good. My apologies if the sound quality is a little off this week. It's really hot here in Michigan, and we don't have air conditioning in our old farmhouse. So all of the windows are open, and it's not the best for studio soundproofing. So I'm outside in my shed, which I'm not really sure is any better or cooler, but hey, here I am. I'll try to reduce the noise while editing, but you might still catch the occasional fly buzzing or bird chirping. This week is going to be a total Q&A session where I address some listener questions that have been emailed in to me. I'm going to be citing several articles, reports, and news in this episode, so just know that you'll be able to find links to all of the sources I mention in the show notes of this episode. First, though, I'd like to give you all an update on things for me since the last episode. One of the things I want to share with everyone who's listening, regardless of where you are in your gambling addiction recovery journey, is that things do get better. I promise. I had a pretty nice Memorial Day weekend. For those who are listening from other parts of the world, that's a federal holiday of somber mourning for those military men and women who lost their lives while serving our country. I lost a relative who was a soldier that died in action in Afghanistan several years ago, and every single year on Memorial Weekend, I feel so much gratitude and sadness that he gave his life for our country. It's a sobering holiday of remembrance and honor for those who gave all so that we could have all. Freedom is never free. In the grand scale of things, we're living in a society where we have the freedom to sit and play mindless casino games, wagering our precious income for entertainment or financial gain or personal comfort or to satisfy an addiction. It gave me perspective to see my addiction as such a frivolous thing. When you look back in history at those who fought wars or lived through the Great Depression or who grew up in utter poverty or who were citizens in a country with a dictator and had to endure oppression or starvation or who died in the Holocaust, it's all a reminder that we're such a pampered, privileged society to be able to pick up our smartphone, deposit a few $100, and gamble it all away. What a waste. A waste of time, a waste of money, a waste of our talents and passions and motivation and effort to do better things. In Michigan, and I'm sure in other places around the country, Memorial Day weekend marks the start of summer. It's around this time that weather gets nice and warm, and all of the flowers and trees are in full bloom, and everyone hosts their first pool party or barbecue. I had a 4-day weekend, and it was wonderful to finally have a bit of downtime as I wind down the final days of employment. While I did spend some time scouring the job boards and applying to jobs, I took the liberty of enjoying the glorious weekend. I replanted some tomatoes and peppers, although they probably won't have enough time to grow properly, being so far north in my growing zone. My hubby went to a men's breakfast at church on Saturday morning, and while he was there, I headed to a nearby park trail for my first walk in the woods. I'd been on a few lunchtime walks on our road, but this was the first time I was able to get to my happy place and enjoy the trails. For about an hour, I reveled in the beauty of the morning, listening to my Bible app as I walked and prayed. The next day, on Sunday after church, we both went to another park that we enjoy, where we did more hiking and a little fishing. Well, my hubby fished while I looked for morels. It's already really hot here and quite dry, so it hasn't been the best mushroom season. Still, I got some good exercise and fresh air and sunshine, and a lot of God time. We spent the rest of the weekend working around our property, and it just felt so good to be outside after all those dark, cold, dreary gray days of winter. One of the projects my husband tackled was our deck. You all know we have an old farmhouse, and we've got this wood deck that hasn't been refinished or stained in years. It's such a perfect example of what my spiritual gambling addiction recovery has been like. After years and years of exposure, the wood had slowly been covered up by mold and mildew in a gross green slime that just kept spreading and getting thicker. He pulled out the old power washer that we have and finally gave it a good scrubbing with the powerful blast of water and soap. It was amazing to watch. Everywhere he sprayed the nozzle of the washer, moving the wand back and forth, he blasted the slimy mold away and the bright, clean wood appeared underneath. It took forever going over it again and again until not a speck of dirt, grime, or green slime remained. That's what those first few months of my abstinence from gambling was like. It was a painful, grueling, laborious process to slog through, but bit by bit, as each day passed, the ugly, grody stuff that had been growing and taking over my life finally began receding. And then, through the power of the Holy Spirit and God's grace, I found myself clean, free of the nastiness that clung to me for so long, but bare and raw and exposed, with jagged edges that still hurt and snagged at my soul. So, the process doesn't end there. Next, my hubs had to sand the whole thing down and then give it another good rinse. And then, in order to protect it from any further damage, he had to seal it. That's the part of my recovery that I'm in now, the sanding and sealing part. I say that because, friends, sometimes I have bad days, like I described in my episode previously, where I just fell apart. But this past week, with the holiday weekend, I had good days, several of them. I find myself going many, many hours without beating myself up or stressing about money. I mean, I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, how can I go any lower than I am right now? I can't. Financially, I'm the worst I've ever been in my entire life. And you know what? There's a little bit of freedom in that. Pastor Greg Laurie, whose life was depicted in the movie I mentioned last week called The Jesus Revolution, said something in one of his recent online YouTube sermons that just struck me with so much hope. He said that the greatest blessings from God typically come after the worst hardships, temptations, or trials. Remember last week I shared that verse from 1 Peter 5:8 that says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." It's a pretty sobering verse, isn't it? But allow me to read on because the best part is what comes next, after that. It's such a message of hope. Peter goes on to say in verses 9 and 10, "Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of sufferings. And God of all grace, who called you to eternal glory in Christ, after you've suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast." It does get better, my peeps. Not every day is going to be great, and you still might find yourself in a serious financial hole like me, but you will find that you're having more good days than bad days as time goes on. And with each week, each month, the good days will really start to outweigh the bad days. Like David said in Psalm 56, "What can mere mortals do to me?" I mean, for real, right? And finally, I've had some interviews this week. One job in particular looks promising. It fits my background and career experience perfectly and would be the most money I've ever made in my life, which would be amazing for helping me get out of debt and a blessing from God for sure. But this job would involve a lot of travel, like a lot of travel, which is not ideal for me being the homebody homesteader that I am. And it definitely would not be my preference. But I'll be praying on it, and if it's God's will, so be it. Anyway, let's move on to the emails. Before I dive into the questions, I want to share this email from a listener who isn't exactly asking a question, but just wanted to share her experience with a Michigan casino app. It's kind of long, but I really appreciated her taking the time out to provide so much detail. Like Brian Hatch said to me on our interview, the devil is in the details when it comes to calling out these casinos and their sketchy business practices. I'm changing this gal's name to protect and respect her privacy. Hi, Maria. My name is Jennifer, and I just listened to your episode where you talk about all the shady things that those casino apps do. I wanted to share my experience with you. I'm now almost 4 weeks gamble-free, and this happened in the late winter. Like you, I only started gambling last year when I went to one of the Detroit casinos, and this lady next to me told me there were apps where you could play online. That started my own addiction. Now, I have 2 debit cards linked to 2 different checking accounts, and then 2 credit cards from major banks. At first, I played one casino app, strictly using my one debit card linked to my personal checking account with a major bank to make deposits, and ended up maxing out one of my credit cards by taking cash advances. In a moment of frustration and panic at some big losses, I self-excluded from the app I'd been playing and cut up my remaining credit card so I wouldn't be tempted to use it. I left the account open though, but I really tried hard not to gamble anymore or go into any more debt. But you know what it's like as an addict. A few days later, I downloaded a different casino app. But for some reason, it wouldn't accept the debit card that I'd been using for deposits on the other app. I don't know if it was my bank or the app, so I dug out my other debit card. Now, I used to own an Etsy shop where I sold jewelry and sold on Amazon too, but I shut that down last year because it just wasn't making me enough money. But I still had the business checking account I used, and that's what the other debit card was linked to. I didn't have any money in there, but I did an online cash advance transfer from my remaining credit card to that business checking account. I'd cut up the credit card, but I still had access to my account online in my virtual card. You know how it is. Addicts will find a way, even if you make promises to yourself that you'll stop. Once I registered in the app, I deposited $100 into the new casino app and began playing. I did take the bonus they offered, which was 30 times. Oh my gosh, I'm still baffled at that. I can't believe they have a 30 times playthrough. So I had to play through $3,000. But I didn't really like that app a whole lot, so when I had $500 in my bank after completing the playthrough, I requested a withdrawal. The app sent me an email stating that my account needed verification before they could process my withdrawal. They requested a copy of my license and the front and back of my card, and like you said, asked me to block out all but the last 4 digits. The next day, I got a sternly worded email that I violated their policy by using that debit card. I have no idea what they meant by that. I'm guessing it's because it was a business debit card? Not sure. I'm not even using it for business anymore. They told me my account was temporarily suspended, which was fine with me. I didn't plan on playing that app anymore anyway. I replied to their email and asked about my withdrawal. The next day, I received an email back that said they would process my withdrawal only if I provided a bank statement of my business checking account that I used to deposit, as well as a copy of the front and back of my credit card that I'd used to transfer funds into that business checking account. Here's the crazy thing. They actually had the last 4 digits of that credit card number that I used to transfer money into my business checking account. The email said for me to upload proof of my card number ending in the last 4 digits 5555. I'm making that up, but they had my real digits. How did they even get that? How did they know that I even used a credit card to transfer a cash advance into that account? How did they know that I didn't already have money in there to begin with? I didn't understand. All I had given them was a copy of my driver's license as well as the front and back of my business checking debit card. And yet, they were able to figure out that I had transferred money into that account and knew exactly which card I used to do that. I wrote them back and said, as someone who's trying to reduce debt, I no longer had the physical card because I'd cut it up, but could give them a copy of my virtual card. Another day passed, and they wrote back and said it would be sufficient for me to upload my full bank statement for my business checking account and a recent statement from that credit card as well. So, I downloaded my last statement for each of those and uploaded them to my account on the casino site. Again, another day went by, and again they emailed stating that my verification wasn't valid because the statements didn't show the casino transactions. I wrote back and said that was because I had just made those transactions earlier in the week, and they wouldn't yet be on any monthly statement. At this point, it was now 3 days since I requested that withdrawal. When I didn't hear back from them, I chatted with an agent who told me to upload proof of recent transactions for each of those cards. I asked them how they knew what card I'd used to transfer money into my checking account, but they didn't know. Again, I got an email the next day saying it was rejected because they don't accept screenshots and needed actual statements. To make a long story short, I went around and around like this with that casino for over a week. They kept telling me they needed a copy of the front and back of my credit card that I'd used to transfer money into my checking account, which I told them I don't have physically anymore. They also kept insisting that I needed to have a statement from both banks, not a screenshot, showing the transactions they were looking for. I figured it was worth calling the credit card company to get a new card issued to me so I could get that $500. But since I was requesting a new card, they would issue me a new card number to prevent theft or fraud, so that wasn't going to work either. I never did end up getting my $500 withdrawal. They kept it. I had 4 different chat conversations and even called and talked to somebody on the phone, and they all said the same thing. They could not process my withdrawal without the requested verification documents. Even if I had waited until the end of the month when I got actual statements showing the casino transactions, I no longer had the physical credit card. Since then, I've self-excluded from all the apps and have no intention of gambling again. I'm so mad over that lost money. But I guess I consider it an expensive lesson learned. I mean, do the physical casinos request that you provide them bank statements when you get a hand pay? Or request statements and take photos of your cards when you make ATM withdrawals for money to play with, or credit cards that you use to buy chips? If they had the ability to see into my account that I had made those transactions, then clearly they know those accounts belong to me, and this isn't some kind of fraud or identity theft. Those online casinos are thieves, every last one of them. I wonder how many other people they're doing this to, and how many other withdrawals they're actually keeping. Go ahead and share my story if you want, but please don't use my name. Keep up the great work, Maria. Your podcast helps me get through my week. Wow, folks, isn't that crazy? How did the casino know which credit card she used to transfer money into her checking account? And if they were able to see that right from the start, why did they keep demanding documentation from her? And like I said before, isn't having our ID and social security number, address, and contact information enough? I can walk into a physical casino, use the ATM, play slots, win money, and walk out with my winnings without all of that nonsense. Remember my story. They knew who I was when I opened up a chat request without being authenticated, having cookies, or providing my email address or any other identification. I've never delved into what the specifics are within the terms and conditions when you register with an app, but it sounds to me like they have some serious ability to dig into your identity, your finances, and your personal information that you wouldn't even dream they have access to. I mean, whoever reads every word of the terms and conditions? When you download a new update for iOS on your iPhone, do you just scroll through and click accept? Or do you read every single word of what you're accepting? Most of us just click accept in good faith that they aren't doing nefarious things to your personal privacy. But that's obviously naive to think that with the online casino apps. I think one of the pieces of reform that absolutely needs to happen in the gaming industry is that they spell out clearly to users what kind of information they're accessing about you. This is like high-level NSA stuff. My bank doesn't even have the ability to see all of my transactions with other banks or credit cards. And yet these casinos do? That's absolutely insane. If you have a story like this or some other incident that you feel goes above and beyond typical identification verification or violates your personal privacy, please send it to me to share here on this podcast. I'll keep your identity anonymous as well. My email is maria@thefeelingbetter.com. I do want you all to know, though, that I went to the website of one of Michigan's online casinos and looked at their terms and conditions. All of you who are like me, who never actually read through those before, this is for you. You can thank me later. I wish I would have known this before I signed up. Honestly, in those early days before I became an addict, I never would have continued with my account registration had I known this. So check out what it says. We reserve the right to perform any background and credit checks on any player for any reason, including, but not limited to, any investigation into the identity of any player, any credit checks performed on him or her, any inquiries into his or her personal history. The purposes for such investigations may include, without limitation, verification of registration details such as name, address, and age, verification of financial transactions, and verification of gaming activity. In no event shall we be obligated to advise you of such investigations taking place. Information received from any such investigation may be used to cancel or block any account in our discretion. You hereby acknowledge that verifications associated with internet gaming, such as those for identity or location, may involve our use of information from credit reporting agencies and therefore may result in a negative impact on your credit report. Wow. Did you know that was what you were agreeing to? Investigations into your personal, financial, and background without limitations? I mean, hypothetically, without limitations could potentially mean anything from enabling a remote bot to activate your webcam, or accessing your photos on your phone, or enabling your microphone to hear your voice. Am I right? I mean, what other app, software, or hardware allows unlimited personal identity verification processes or methods without being obliged to advise you of what those processes or methods are? Man, I thought casinos were the evil warlords before. This takes it to a whole new level. And for my dear listener Jennifer and anyone else who had frustrations trying to withdraw their money, the terms and conditions also state this. We reserve the right to request that any player verify ownership of any deposit or payout method either before or after executing a withdrawal request, and the player agrees to comply with any verification request in a complete and timely manner. Until the withdrawal funds have been verified, the funds shall be held by us. Got that? So, you want your money? Asked the casino. Sure thing. Just fork over your recent bank statement, which is just a formality because within 2 clicks and 10 seconds, we've got access to all of your financial accounts and every single thing you paid for, bought, or transacted in the last 3 months. Oh wow, look at that. Your credit cards are totally maxed out. You overdrafted 8 times this month. Your Blink camera shows you've been parked in your driveway for the last 3 days and you haven't showed up for work. Your front-facing camera on your phone reveals you're lying on your couch, looking miserable, eating Cheetos, and you haven't shaved or showered by the looks of it. You just downloaded 2 other casino apps, and your Safari browsing history has a bunch of hits about crypto casinos. We've got the recording of you talking to your boss, calling in sick. You're past due on your electric bill and your car payment. And you're addicted to porn. Nice. And you're totally broke. You've got 0 balance in your checking account. And this morning you just had your dad Venmo you $20, which you blew on McDonald's and an Amazon movie. Yeah, sorry. Everything we're seeing here screams loser who has 0 money to gamble. So we're going to make it hard for you to withdraw that $500 that you just made the first time you played our casino app. No way, buddy. We're hanging on to that, thank you very much. I mean, friends, given the wording of the license you agreed to when downloading their app, without limitation, That scenario is entirely possible. Believe me, they know who you are. They know your accounts are valid. You're only withdrawing $500 or $1,000, not $10,000. And yet, they make it so hard. Why is that? I'm only speculating here, but my guess is that you're a clear risk, a liability. You fit all the parameters of a compulsive gambling addict, which means you don't have much to deposit and you'll go through any means possible to gamble. Maybe use your corporate credit card. Maybe create an account under your sister's name. Maybe deposit funds you know you're going to overdraft. Whatever. You, my friend, in that hypothetical scenario, threw up a bunch of red flags that pegged you as high risk. So they dug deep and had no plans to approve your withdrawal unless they had every piece of potential evidence of your deposits and your identity in order to cover their own butts. And maybe feed their own machine learning database of player persona identification. But that last part is just my opinion. Anyways, let's move on, shall we? Question number 2 comes from a female as well. See, I knew there were more women in the problem gambling community than we all assumed. This gal asked for my opinion about casino advertising. I think it's different depending on the state or the country you live in, and whether you're talking about a physical or online casino. This listener in particular was referring to physical casinos. In her case, these physical casinos send out flyers each month, sometimes several times a month or week, showing you how much free slot play you can use. She said to me in her email, "If you've racked up a lot of points, it is worth the trip if you leave with what you win on their dime. But I keep playing hoping to win a jackpot. At times, you could have up to $100 in free play. And sometimes these advertisements come several times a week." She told me that's how her addiction started, and she sent me a screenshot of what one of those flyers looks like. Thanks, girl, for your question and emailing me. I totally get that. I talked a bit before about casino advertising, in particular with social media ads and billboards. It drove me bananas that even after I self-excluded from all the apps, I continued to get flyers in the mail and emails from them. One of them landed in my inbox yesterday and it legit said, "It's your lucky day. You have $100 waiting for you in your player bank when you return." This must have been a casino where I self-excluded for a year and, I don't know, maybe just crossed the 6-month mark or something. I also still continue to receive flyers and advertisements in the mail offering free bets, deposit bonuses, special contests, and more, even though I'm self-excluded. Again, I talked about this with Brian Hatch on his podcast, All In, the Addicted Gamblers podcast. Responsible gaming is something that so far has put all the onus on the individual player, not the casino. Here in Michigan, by law, they have to provide responsible gaming limits and the ability to self-exclude. But that's where their responsibility ends. The Michigan Gaming website offers brochures on its resources page about how to tell if you have a problem and how to get on the disassociated persons list to self-exclude from casinos. I had to dig deep into the Michigan Gaming Control Board's rules and regulations for internet gaming. And all it basically says is that the internet gaming sites may disclose the name of self-excluded individuals to a registered or licensed third party to remove the names of those individuals from marketing or advertising. But it doesn't say that they have to or that they're required to. In the 70-page document, there are only 3 mentions of the word advertising. One of them, interestingly enough, says this: Internet gaming operators or internet gaming platform providers may utilize celebrity authorized participants or other authorized participants to participate in peer-to-peer games for advertising or publicity purposes. Such authorized participants may have their internet wagering account funded in whole or in part by an internet gaming operator or internet gaming platform provider. Side note, want to hear a couple of crazy things that I found while digging around in those rules and regulations? Check this out. Rule number 649.3 says this: an internet gaming platform or internet gaming platform provider must provide a clear and conspicuous method for an authorized participant to cancel his or her participation in a bonus or a promotional wagering offer that utilizes restricted gaming credits that cannot be cashed out until a wagering requirement or other restrictions associated with the credit is met. If an authorized participant elects to proceed with cancellation, unrestricted funds remaining in an internet wagering account must be returned according to the terms and conditions. That's super interesting. I remember several casinos where I accidentally or unknowingly deposited with their deposit bonus. And there was one in particular where I specifically chose I do not want to take the deposit bonus. And yet, after I deposited, there it was, the deposit bonus. I have no idea how that happened, and I couldn't find a way to cancel it. So, I'm sorry, but have you ever seen a clear and conspicuous method for canceling our participation in a deposit bonus or some kind of playthrough promotion with the option to simply get our unrestricted deposit back? Yeah, neither have I. Here's another crazy thing I found. Rule number 674.3 reads, an individual may have his or her name added to the self-exclusion list maintained by the internet gaming operator or internet gaming platform provider if he or she agrees to release the state, the board, and its employees and agents, the internet gaming operator, the internet gaming betting platform provider, and each of their respective officers, directors, employees, and agents from any harm, monetary or otherwise, that may arise as a consequence of placing his or her name in the responsible gaming database or self-exclusion list. Wow. Again, not once in any of the 15 or so apps that we have here in Michigan that I've self-excluded from was I provided any language that I'm agreeing to release the state, the board, or the casino from any harm. Isn't that interesting? Before I move on, big thanks to my listener who emailed in that question. She's actually very sweet and checked in on me a few times. I'm kind of starting to feel like the Dear Abby of problem gambling. And most of you under 30 probably have no idea who that is. Don't worry about it. It's not critical. But my advice to this gal is to go to the casinos in your area, the ones you're getting those flyers from. Make a physical trip, walk in, and tell them that you want to self-exclude and remove your name from their mailing list. It's not awkward or uncomfortable. It's an easy process. But whether online or physical gambling, if you think you have a problem with compulsive gambling, you've got to self-exclude. You have to. It's the only way. It's going to keep sucking you in, tempting you if you don't do it. It would be like declaring emphatically that you're going on a diet, but still stopping at Tim Hortons or Dunkin' Donuts every morning for coffee before work. You might be able to stay strong and hold out for a couple of weeks at the beginning, but at some point, that temptation is going to get you. They're going to pull a fresh batch of honey crullers out of the oven, and you are not going to be able to resist the urge. And once you put that warm, sugary, doughy goodness in your mouth, it's all over. You'll make an excuse or find some way to justify more. See what I'm saying, hon? You've just got to go do it. Just sever the ability to gamble once and for all. I know you get upset or frustrated at seeing those flyers in the mail and that you want to go and maybe win some money on their dime, but it's not worth it. That's advertising. It's marketing purposely intended to suck you in and get you there so you can spend your own money. You have to go there, self-exclude, and remove yourself from their mailing list. Life will be a lot easier and a lot less painful for you, I promise. On that topic, I did have another listener who's been waiting for me to talk about why it's so hard to self-exclude. Yeah, I get that too. I think the answer is obvious. Whether consciously or subconsciously, we don't want to give up the potential for a big win that would ultimately pull us out of our hole, right? I mean, once you're self-excluded from all the games for good, Now you have no choice but to give up that hope of a big win that would rescue you from your debt. But let me reassure you, no casino game can rescue you from that dark pit. Only God can do that. And I'm sure there are some that saw gambling as some kind of friend or a hobby or something to do when they're bored or restless or need entertainment. I hope those people who feel that still to this day or who are listening to this will go back through my podcast and begin the 10-week program from the start so that you can learn how to find other things to purposefully and meaningfully occupy your time. It's a disconnect in your soul, your spirit, and you can't find fulfillment in other things. I show you the behind-the-scenes perspective into that and offer helpful ways to reshape your life and your thoughts so that gambling no longer dominates your brain. Well, we have a little bit of time left, and since we're here on this episode shaming the casinos, allow me to pull out a few new statistics that popped up in May from the American Gaming Association's website about the year 2022 versus 2021. They state, despite persistent concerns about the financial health of American consumers throughout 2022, the U.S. commercial casino gaming industry generated record-breaking revenue for the second consecutive year as total nationwide consumer spending on commercial casino gaming and sports betting increased by 14% to $60.46 billion. Awesome. Don't you love it? So they're essentially saying, despite the concerns that Americans are more broke than ever in this economy with rising inflation and higher costs, the casino industry had a record-breaking year and is up 14% year over year. That's so nice. Good for them. Just like big oil and gas, just like big pharma, just like big tobacco, they're getting in line to suck their share of whatever remains of the mental, physical, and financial health of Americans. The website also says in its 2022 report, in 2022, nearly all of the 35 jurisdictions with commercial casinos or sports betting operations saw a rise in annual gaming revenue, with only the District of Columbia, Mississippi, and South Dakota reporting a decline. 27 out of the 35 jurisdictions achieved their highest ever annual revenue from commercial gaming. Notably, Nebraska and Virginia joined the commercial casino marketplace in 2022 with the expansion of land-based casinos in each state. My friends in Connecticut, your state leads the pack with a 430% increase in consumer spend on commercial gaming year over year. Arizona also took a big leap with nearly 200%. Michigan only went up by 20%, but remember, this is 2022 over 2021. Michigan online casinos only first launched in 2021. I'm sure that number will take a huge leap next spring when they look at 2023 versus 2022. Sports betting soared over 61% year over year. And the website also shares that in Q1, the first 3 months of this year, quote, the U.S. commercial gaming industry showed no signs of slowing down in the first quarter of 2023, with gaming revenue growing at an annual rate of 15.5% according to the American Gaming Association. This is looking at all three types of gaming: traditional physical casinos, sports betting, and online gaming, which they call iGaming. Here are a few other stats as of May 2023. 33 states allow sports betting, with 24 states and Washington, D.C. allowing mobile online sports betting. In Kansas, Kentucky, Florida, and Maine, it is now legal, but not yet fully launched. In Kansas, it will only be physical. Mobile online sports betting will not be legal there. So that means within the year, or when fully launched, over 27 million Americans will have new access to online sports betting. Texas, North Dakota, North Carolina, and New Hampshire have ballot initiatives this year to approve sports betting, both physical and online. That leaves only 11 states that do not allow any kind of sports betting at all: Alaska, Hawaii, California, Idaho, Utah, Oklahoma, Missouri, Minnesota, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. Now let's talk about casino gaming. All but 5 states have some form of physical casino gambling, whether commercial casinos or tribal casinos. Those 5 states are Utah, Kentucky, Georgia, South Carolina, and New Hampshire. I'm thinking I want to move to one of those states. Good for you. I understand it's a source of tax revenue for the state, but it's at the expense of harming the American mind, mental well-being, and financial security. Hang tight, I'll share more about that in a moment. Only 6 states currently allow online slot gaming: New Jersey, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Michigan, Delaware, and Connecticut. So what's on the horizon? First, New York. Democrat Senator Joseph P. Addabbo Jr. is pushing hard for legalized online casino gaming for 2024 in New York State. According to EliteSportsNewYork.com, he, quote, made it clear that iGaming will be a priority of his in 2024. Look out, New Yorkers. Next up, Rhode Island. The Sports Betting Alliance, which describes itself as a coalition of mobile gaming operators, including DraftKings, FanDuel, and BetMGM, is pushing back on Rhode Island's hesitancy to approve iGaming. Is the state going to cave under the pressure? They do currently allow online state lottery games, but no other form of online games. This is interesting, however. Yet another piece of evidence of how they track players. John Mandel, who's a representative of that online casino alliance, tried to make their case by saying that Rhode Island residents will just drive to other states. He said, and I quote, "The results will be no different than mobile sports betting. Residents will 1. Continue to use the illegal market, 2. Drive into Connecticut, or 3. Wait until Massachusetts legalizes iGaming to then cross the border to the benefit of that state, not Rhode Island." He went on to say as evidence for his argument that during the first month that Massachusetts offered mobile sports betting, which was March 10th to April 9th, GeoComply identified 1,761 instances of a Rhode Island resident first attempting to access a Massachusetts sports betting app in Rhode Island and then traveling to Massachusetts to successfully log into the app. So does that mean Massachusetts may be next? Possibly. Several states had iGaming bills on the table, but none of them panned out. Thankfully, casino and gaming CEOs are all over the country, though, lobbying for new bills and trying to convince the states that the tax revenue is worth the approval of those bills. Around the world, numerous articles and press releases speak to even more expansion of iGaming across Canada, Australia, and the UK, as well as new iGaming deals and casino vendors in places like Sweden, Brazil, the Balkans, Switzerland, Italy, Austria, and many parts of Asia. I even read one article that declared by 2026, Latin America, specifically Colombia, Brazil, and Mexico, will produce the greatest iGaming revenue in the industry. Should all of this be cause for concern? Absolutely. In fact, I found an article from casino.org that reports on a study done in Pennsylvania. It says the 2022 online gambling report, completed through a partnership between the Pennsylvania Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs, DDAP, Penn State University, and the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board, found that 36.7% of all online gamblers conceded that they experienced at least one gambling problem. Examples of gambling problems include betting more or spending more time gambling than the player initially intended, betting until their wagering account was exhausted, and missing social events or work because of their gambling. That's incredible to me, and I'm guessing that number is probably even higher than that. The report also goes on to say, while legacy gaming, in-person retail slots and table games, continues to enlarge in terms of annual gross gaming revenue, Pennsylvania's relatively new iGaming market is more of a concern as it relates to potential problem gambling. Pennsylvania gamblers lost $1.36 billion playing interactive online slots and table games last year. In 2020, that number was only $565.7 million. It also shares the stat that calls to Pennsylvania's compulsive gambling hotline has more than doubled. If you want to do some quick, easy research on your own as to what's new out there in the gambling world, it's simple to do so. Just type in iGaming into a Google search and then click on the link for news. There's a button at the top right of the page for tools. Click on the tools button and then sort by date. Well, folks, I had full intention to answer a couple more emails, but I'm going to save those for another episode. If you have anything that you want to share, don't hesitate to email me. Finally, I have one particular special listener who's in the Middle East. She knows who she is. She's been having a tough time lately and emailing me back and forth. So I'm going to say a special prayer for her. Father God in heaven, you know this woman that I'm talking about. I don't want to say her name or need to say her name, but I know she's listening to this. And I want her to know that I, along with everyone else who's hearing this, want to lift her up in prayer so that you may fill her with strength, steadfastness, and the fullness of your Spirit to defeat her demons and win her battle with gambling addiction. Let her know that you're with her, Lord. Give her a sign, some special hug, to let her know that all is not lost and that you will lift her up out of her dark, hopeless place. She's in my heart and my thoughts and my prayers, and I give her to you, Father, to care for. Christ has the power by his name to cast out demons, and so I pray this prayer in his holy name so that she may be freed. Amen. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. God bless, stay safe, and I'll see you next Sunday.
Like holy water, like sand on a bird, rain in a drought, it's all over.